What's up, everyone? Welcome to the FAA podcast. Good to be here, back in good old PA on Eastern time. It's a little weird living 3 years in Central time, but we're here. I actually prefer Central, dude. I think the 1 hour is nice. Just 1 hour is makes everything a little earlier. It's nice for sporting events and stuff. So. So we had the end of the UFL regular season ended last night, and we'll talk about that week 10, and got some news going on in the NFL, and then we'll break down the Seahawks and Bengals draft recap there. So, week 10 kicked off on Saturday with the first of two UFL playoff preview matchups. Stallions beating the Panthers 20-19. Dude, this weekend was absolutely ridiculous. I should have won a bunch. I hate kickers. The worst human beings in the world. And that's why I lost, because of kickers. Kickers suck. This one was the first one on the weekend that came down to a kick. Jake Bates from, I forget what it was, 46, I think, something like that. Wide right. And I posted right away on X about it. Jake Bates has been horrendous outside. In the dome, he was also good when they played at San Antonio. Those are the only two domed stadiums in the league. But when he's played outside on the road, he's not 3 of 7. He did go 2 of 3 in this game, but he missed the one that counted at the end. So outside, yeah, I mean, it hasn't been very great for Jake Bates. Again, he was good in this game, except for the final one, which it also looked weird. The operation looked a little funky at the end. It looked like Bates himself kind of false started a little bit. It looked like he started to go before the snap actually happened, but I don't know if that threw off the timing or what, or why he missed right. But yeah, it's tough. Like I said, this game didn't matter a lot. It just mattered of who actually was going to be in the home locker room, because it was going to be in Birmingham regardless. But the Birmingham Stallions will have their own home locker room for next week's playoff game. Danny Etling was decent in this game. I mean, he was the best quarterback, but there wasn't a lot of great play. It was defensive battle for most of the game. Etling there, 51.6%, 195 touchdown, 36 rushing yards, and a touchdown on the ground as well. Bryce Perkins for Michigan only threw one pass, did have 37 yards rushing, but he got injured, so that was a big injury for Michigan's kind of two-quarterback system that they've been running for the last 2 weeks, starting Etling and playing him the first half, playing Perkins in the second half. It had been working for them. They were on a 5-game win streak, or 6-game win streak, whatever it was, but not sure if Perkins is going to be there, kind of foreshadowing one of the UFL news things, but that is the plan going forward right now with Michigan. Danny Etling's going to remain the starter next week, and like I said, not sure yet on what Bryce Perkins' status will be, if he can go or not. Adrian Martinez, this might have been his worst game of the year. I mean, you could also say their loss was his worst game as well, because he had a bunch of picks in that game. But only 50% on this one, 163 yards, touchdown. did have 41 rushing yards and two one-point conversions. The second one ending up winning the game to Marcus Ball because Bates missed a field goal. But yeah, it was a middling game. And I think it was good for the Panthers and the Brahmas, the teams that lost these playoff previews. I think they can still gain some confidence, even though they lost. Michigan, actually both, I should say, because they both lost on last-second field goals. And, they had the game. Like, it was there for them. This one, though, as opposed to the San Antonio game, this one does feel a little bit tougher on Michigan. They had a 16-6 lead at one point. Got outscored 14-3 in the second half, and that was the toughest part, I think, for Michigan to swallow in this one. CJ Marable, excellent game for him. 56 yards on 10 carries, 2 touchdowns, 3 catches, 29 yards on 5 targets. Lead the game in rushing. Siosi Mariner continues to just bomb for Michigan right now. 7 catches, 110 yards, touchdown on 12 targets. Man is balling out the last 3 or 4 weeks here as they had some injuries at the position. Sternberger scoring again. And then defensively, I got to go with Michigan. Linebacker Javen White. 6 tackles, all of them solos, 2 sacks, 2 tackles for loss. Panthers +8 covered. I did hit that one. I did, but then I live bet the Panthers money line. I was like, dude, they got enough time. I think they had 50 seconds by the time the offense got on the field. They had 2 timeouts. I was like, they have time. Etling's going to get them down there. We're going to walk it off with Bates. Etling did his job. Bates did not. Under 43.5. The other playoff matchup here, the Battlehawks beating the Brahmas 13-12. That's a nice score there. Yeah, I mean, this is what I thought. This is what had to happen for San Antonio to win. That defense, like I said, was going to ball out. They have been balling out. And they let up 13 points. I feel like I'm back in high school, man. When I played defense in high school, my senior year, when I started all 10 games, we gave up right around 13.5 points per game, and we went 3-7. So I feel for the Brahmas defenders, dude. This is tough. 13 is a score you should be able to win, letting up. But Donnie Abraham had that Battlehawks defense rolling as well. Quentin Dormady was leading passer in this one, 15-27, 55.6%, 188, a touchdown. Garber's also playing 5 of 11, 45.5%, 40 yards and a pick. So not the greatest from Chase Garbers in this one. A.J. McCarron really didn't play that well either. Like I said, the defense was outstanding all day, especially the coverage on the back end for San Antonio. 10 of 24, 41.7%, 115, a touchdown, a pick, 4 carries, 12 yards, and a 1-point conversion. But again, I think this one is different than Michigan because San Antonio was down. They were down 13-6 or 10-6, whatever it was. And then, they came back and they had the win. They had the lead. They were up because they got the 2-point conversion on their second touchdown. However, the clutchest of clutch super challenge use by Coach Becht, they used it on a illegal man downfield call. And no excuse by, I forget, Julian Davenport was the guy that was downfield. Absolutely no excuse. All 4 of the other linemen were standing where they're supposed to. in pass blocking. I don't understand if you're pass blocking, even and your guy goes backward to like go into coverage or something, whatever. What are you doing following him? You know, you're pass blocking. You're not supposed to be going with your guy down the field. So yeah, that was a tough one for San Antonio, but luckily for them, they had a chance. Ryan Santoso had a chance and he missed it. From 51 out, missed both of his field goals on the day. First one was blocked by tight end Jordan Thomas. And I got to say, that is excellent coaching on the St. Louis special team side. They decided on their field goal. I don't know if they've been doing this all year. I haven't really paid attention, but in this game specifically, they decided to put their two tallest guys in the middle, tight end Jordan Thomas and tight end and wide receiver Hakeem Butler, both 6'6". And Thomas got the block on the first one, and I think Butler got a finger on the second one too, the game ender. But yeah, I mean that is excellent coaching personnel wise. Jacob Sailors led the game in rushing here for St. Louis, 12 carries, 50 yards, 2 catches for 7. Morgan Ellison scoring. Jontre Kirkland, another fantastic game for him, even in the loss, 7 for 127, a touchdown on 10 targets. Steven Mitchell got a 22-yard touchdown reception. A whole host of defensive performances here. I'm going to go with San Antonio safety Scott Nelson, though. 9 tackles, 8 solos, 2 tackles for loss, and 2 pass deflections. And there you can see it at the bottom. That was the kickers were the difference. Andre Schmidt hit both of his field goals for St. Louis. Ryan Santoso missed both of his for San Antonio. So 6-point swing right there. Brahmas did cover, though, plus 2.5. That didn't help me, of course. My dumbass took the money line on San Antonio. So, yeah, that was tough. Under 42.5 easily, though. I knew I should have taken that. I had a good feeling about the San Antonio defense. Yesterday, we had the only game that really didn't have any implications. It's just a rivalry game between Arlington and DC. And DC had a lot to play for, trying to get to 500 and end the season on a high note. And Arlington, kind of the same thing. They were trying to avenge their loss to DC earlier in the year. This one was probably the most entertaining game of the weekend, though. 63 points in this one, back and forth affair. DC controlling it a lot of the game. And I will say, Jordan Ta'amu went out on a high note. He was absolutely fantastic. 18 of 34, 52.9%, 218, 2 touchdowns, and a 2-point conversion. Luis Perez struggled. The DC defense was playing very well most of the day, 23 of 37, 62.2%, 215, 3 touchdowns, 2 picks, and a 2-point conversion. The Renegades had a good running attack all day with Davion Smith, 20 carries, 94 yards, 3 catches, 17 yards, and a 1-point conversion. Their wide receiver, Tyler Vaughn's, leading the way in receiving yards as well. 5 for 84, 2 scores on his 8 targets, and a 2-point conversion. Brandon Smith had a long 40-yard touchdown reception on one of his 2 catches. And then Vincent Smith, 43-yard touchdown reception as well on his 2 targets. And he got credited for the safety. Now, Jimmy, did you see this play?
I did not.
Oh, my goodness. You're going to be you're going to be in for a good treat here because
I'm excited. I'm a big fan of treats.
It was if I can find one that's actually just like just the play. Maybe not. Maybe it's on. It might be in the highlights of Fox on Fox Sports here. Maybe. Let's see. Yeah, because the defenders got a safety to go up by 6 on a play that I have never seen anything like this. Absolutely wild, right?
Teams have been eliminated from the playoffs for weeks. They are absolutely going at it. Juwan and
so yeah, okay, so there it is, and then he doesn't even touch him, but he gets credited for the downing of the. So, but this is crazy, right? So he thinks that he's getting a touchback because he is in the end zone, and he's giving himself up. But what he didn't know is that because the ball never crossed the goal line, he brought the ball into his own goal line.
Yikes.
For a safety. The funniest thing about it was that if he wouldn't have even touched it, it would have been a touchback or it would have been down at the 1 yard line, which wouldn't have been great, but would have given Arlington the ball and not given DC 2 points. Because how the UFL rules work is it's like a punt. The receiver doesn't have to touch it. It's not like it's a live ball like the NFL and college. But if he wouldn't have just touched it, I mean, they would have had the ball at the 1 yard line, and maybe would have got a safety anyways. But but yeah, that was the craziest safety I have ever seen. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that in my life. Didn't end up mattering, luckily for Juwan Manigo. But Ty Scott, big day on the targets, caught 5 of his 10 for 35 yards. Deontay Burnett scoring a touchdown as well. Bradley Moore-McKinney throwing a 12-yard pass. And defensively, has to be corner Garyon Conley for DC. He was everywhere. Excellent coverage, 7 tackles, 6 of them solos, tackle for loss, a pick, and 2 pass deflections. I'm really excited. I think he should be one of the top guys off of DC that gets a shot, another shot at the NFL, former first-round pick there of the Raiders. And then, of course, I had to put another kicker on here because it would have mattered. It would have made Arlington go for 3 if Matt McCrane would have made his second field goal on the day. Granted, it was from 54 yards out. But he makes that, and it's a 9-point game instead of a 6-point game. And then Arlington's got to go for 3 instead of 1 to tie it instead of win the game. Another thing, kickers. But yeah, otherwise from this game, it was pretty solid, though. It was DC. I think the biggest issue I saw with them is like they just couldn't close it out, especially because they didn't score a single point, I don't think, on either of the interceptions from Perez, especially that second one. The second one was what set up the McCrane field goal, and they didn't move the ball barely at all after that interception, which made it a long field goal, and McCrane missed it. But Renegades +1 win outright and over 47.5 easily. The final game of the regular season, the Toilet Bowl, as many people were calling it. But the Memphis Showboats getting the win 19-12 over the Roughnecks, and they now control the UFL draft. They have the number one pick in every round, including the number one overall selection. So very happy that Memphis will get some good players in the 2025 UFL draft. But anyways, into this game, it was pretty gross, pretty boring early. 6-3 halftime score for Memphis, and wasn't going very well. Picked it up in the second half. We got some touchdowns. Oh, I forgot actually. Speaking of touchdowns, I forgot to put Mr. Rowland on here. Another guy that should get an NFL shot. Chris Rowland in this game had the first and only kick return touchdown in the UFL this season. 84 yards to the house, and he went over 300 all-purpose yards, I believe, in this game with his kick returns. He had a couple of receptions and punt returns as well. So crazy game from Chris Rowland there. But back to this game. Sidetrack. Nolan Henderson for Houston was pretty good. I mean, 21 of 34, 61.8%, 232, 4 carries, 43 yards. Reed Sinnett barely played a little bit, and he wasn't great. Completed just one of his 2 passes, 50%, 16 yards, and a pick. Josh Love, though, I told you on Friday or Thursday that Josh Love, man, he would be a difference maker in this one. And while the stats aren't great, he did a good job. Really solid completion percentage, 69%, 20 of 29, 152 a pick, and a 1-point conversion. But he did a good job operating the offense, getting the throws that he needed to, timely third down conversions, and just letting Darius Victor run wild and let his thick thighs save all the lives. So 10 carries, 54 yards for Victor, 2 scores, 2 catches for 9 yards as well. Kirk Merritt had a great game. I didn't even know he was coming back for this game. He had been on IR for a majority of the season. I don't think he played last week, but he did play in this one. Got to come back for the last game off his broken wrist early in the season. 6 carries, 24 yards, led the Renegades or Roughnecks in rushing outside of Henderson there. Scored a touchdown on the ground, and he was excellent as a pass catcher. 5 catches, caught all 5 of his targets for 75 yards. Justin Hall continues to be a beast. 8 catches, 70 yards on 12 targets. Jay Adams for the Showboats, he had double-digit targets as well, caught 6 of his 10 for 59 yards. And then defensively, I got to go with Houston safety Markel Roby. Excellent game for him. 4 tackles, 2 solos, sack pick, pass deflection, and a forced fumble. He was pretty much all over the field as well, just like I said Garyon Conley was for DC. Showboats plus 2.5. They win outright under 44.5. And of course, Jimmy, I did not take my Memphis Showboats money line. I did not take their spread. I, of course, took the over 44.5.
Not a good look.
All right. We are going to talk breaking news, Jimmy, because it happened today, so we'll count it as breaking news. And we're going to talk about your guy who got pizzade today. And that's Vikings wide receiver Justin Jefferson. 4 years, $140 million extension, $110 million guaranteed, and of course, $88.743 million at signing. The cash register liked all 3 of those. Sounds like it's a good deal.
I like it. I think it's a good deal. Makes him the new highest paid wide receiver highest paid non-QB in NFL history. And it's hard to argue that he doesn't deserve it. And although he is the highest paid wide receiver, it really does not feel like an overpay. It really does feel like he's being paid his value. And it's hard not to love it. I mean, Justin Jefferson is a game changer. He's the best wide receiver in the league. He should be paid like the best wide receiver in the league, and he is. So getting him for the next, it expires because he has one more year left on his deal, so it expires in 2028, I think, 2028. I mean, having him basically the entirety of JJ's rookie contract and pairing him with TJ Hawkinson for the long term, I mean, it's a good feeling to have. You have the guys you need. It's hard to feel like it's an overpay in any sense, and you have the building blocks for a team that wants to become something.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see what the structure is on this one.
It's very backloaded.
Okay.
So from what I see, so like his last year is let me I know I saw a tweet, so I can pull it up real quick.
Yeah, I don't like that. As from the team perspective, I would prefer either a flat contract or a front load. And really, I mean, obviously the guarantees are going to be front loaded. They're going to be in the first 2 years are probably fully guaranteed. The third year is probably injury guaranteed, I would assume. And the fourth year is not going to be any guarantees. But yeah, I would be interested to see how this one works out. I mean, it's a lot, and it's been a trend. We've seen it all off season. The owners and personnel people are shelling out money for these wide receivers, and I saw a tweet today about it, and they're like, yeah, I mean, they are telling everyone that wide receiver is now the number 2 position in priority on a roster right now. So, which is weird because just saying, like, the wide receiver can't catch the ball if the quarterback's on his back. But
the thing is, you look at the Vikings, they have a pretty solid couple of tackles in Darius Hall and O'Neal. So it's not like a situation where you signed a wide receiver while not having an offensive line.
Right. But like some other teams, I'm trying to think of like the wide receivers that got paid. I mean, most of the wide receivers are on teams that do have tackles that are good.
Yeah, Amon-Ra St. Brown is probably the top one I can think of. A.J. Brown as well.
Yeah, A.J. and Devontae both got paid. Amon-Ra. But I'm looking at, like, the Bengals. The Bengals have been trying to figure out their O-line for years now, and they haven't. And they haven't paid their guys yet. But Higgins on the franchise tag. Chase is up for a deal as well. They already paid Burrow, so they're going to be shelling out a lot for skilled guys when they what they really need to do is, granted, they're not paying a lot for what they hope is going to be their left tackle in Amarius Mims.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other side, I can't remember. We'll talk about that when we look at the Bengals depth chart.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But yeah, I mean, I think the biggest loser of this this new contract is the Bengals, because I mean, I remember all offseason there was a ton of just annoying hype about the idea of Justin Jefferson going to Cincy to get back with Chase and Burrow, and it's going to be the LSU boys. Oh my gosh, you're going to trade him to us. Oh, you're not going to re-sign him. And then this happens, and now they're looking back like, well, shit, we lost Boyd. We have 2 wide receivers that we need to pay, and our offensive line is still extremely questionable. And the health of our own QB, who we paid a ton of money to, is also a huge question mark. So, yeah, sucks to suck, Cincy. I feel bad for you. And good luck.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, I think right now their only option is going to be to play it out with Higgins, pay Chase, get that third round compensatory selection in 2026 whenever Higgins signs somewhere else in free agency next year. That's what I can see as the most likely scenario happening in Cincinnati. But I think a big loser is the Cowboys as well because...
Oh, yeah, they got CeeDee Lamb coming up.
Yeah, and I saw a graphic from someone on Twitter today that had side-by-side JJ and CD.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really close. Like
it's
between
not.
Yes, it
I
is.
saw the exact. It's not. JJ has played about 9 games less than CD, and has had 5.
They didn't put the games on there, Timmy. They didn't put the games on there, so
yeah, it's misleading. I know the exact graph you're talking about.
When you look at clearly the stats, it's close.
It's not close to me.
You're biased.
I mean,
technically, I am too. Talking Cowboys, but anyways, the overall numbers are close on those two, and Dallas still hasn't got a deal for him. And I personally think Dallas is in a very odd situation. Their roster construction is meh right now, especially on the offensive side of the ball. I think there's a big question mark about Dak's future. You know, they haven't signed CD back, and I don't know what the heck's going to happen on the O-line with all their maneuvering that they're going to have to do.
And if you don't get CD back, who's the next man up in that wide receiver room?
Brandon Cooks, baby.
Yeah, I have him on my fantasy team. He's my veteran bench player that is very good for the locker room.
Yeah. They also I saw a tweet that someone was like predicting a breakout season for Jalen Tolbert this year as well. We'll see if that comes to fruition. 3rd rounder in 2022 out of South Alabama. But yeah, let's move on to the other news here. College football news. The SEC considering 9-game conference schedule, which has been talked about for, I feel like, 3 years now with the SEC. A lot of other conferences have 9 games, and what the SEC has to figure out is like, all right, well, does not having 9 games hurt our team's chances of making the CFP for the at-large bids? Because obviously the SEC gets an automatic bid for, or they're pretty much gonna have an automatic bid since the top, what is it, 6? Yeah, the top 6 highest ranked conference champions make it, and then the next 6 teams in the rankings make it as well. So yeah, I would have to think that the SEC is going to have one of the top 6 highest ranked conference champions every single year. But when you look at their other teams, it's going to be interesting to see how many teams the SEC gets in this first year. Because I think last year, we had, obviously Alabama was the SEC champ. You had Georgia ranked as number 6. And then Missouri was highly ranked as well. And I'm trying to think who else. And then obviously now, though, they have Texas, who's Big 12 champ last year. Have to think they're going to be in consideration as well, as they have a bunch of guys back. So, I mean, there's 4 teams right away. I do think Missouri is going to continue to be good. They have a lot of pieces back as well. And then you add in I'll add in Ole Miss, because there's a lot of hype surrounding Ole Miss this season as well. I mean, that's 5 out of 12 already. So, and you think about it, that's 4 out of the 6 at-large bids. So, like, that's a lot. That's 2/3 of the at-large bids just from one conference. So I'm not sure. It'll be very intriguing when we get to December after the conference championship games and like, all right, well, who is all going to be in? There's going to be a lot of discussion on what the weight of the SEC is. And I would even add in what the weight of the Big Ten is, who already has a 9-game conference schedule. How many teams get in from those as well? Or do we just see the CFP go crazy and like, all right, all 6 of the teams are Big Ten SEC that are the non-conference champs? I mean, I can see that happening. Like I said, I already picked 4 SEC teams that could make it. And then easily, when you look at the Big Ten, you're going to get a Big Ten champ out of Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, USC are the top 4 contenders. Or not USC, Oregon. You could add USC if you want. But Oregon is probably the 4th in addition to the Big 3 and the Big 10 usually. So right there, you're looking at 3 teams for 2 spots if all the SEC teams that I said already get in. So yeah, it's gonna be weird. Then we'll get all the people from teams that didn't get in, and they're gonna be like, "No, we need 16 teams now." And eventually, we're just gonna get to an FCS playoff style system where we're playing freaking 32 teams.
It's getting to that point. Essentially just March Madness, but college football.
Well, dude, that's the FCS.
New Year's Madness.
The FCS runs, I think theirs is 32. But, I mean, they have a lot more conferences, obviously. All right. Interesting one that was passed by a bunch of state attorney generals and other people. Players can now transfer an unlimited amount of times. Don't have to sit out a year like they had to or get a waiver. And the most frustrating part for us as evaluators and also for NFL people and anyone evaluating college, even the college football people. Apparently players who did have to sit out, I don't know like what the statute of limitations is, how far back this goes. I guess it's just like, all right, whoever is, if you ever had to sit out and you're still in college right now playing, you get the year back that you had to sit out under the old transfer rule. So now not only do we still have these people using these COVID years and whatever, plus the red shirts, and then like medical red shirt, but now you're going to have a transfer year as well that all these kids are going to get back. So looks like it's going to be another couple years still until we get back to normalcy where we're not having 9th-year seniors. Hey man, I was a 9th-year senior this year. It's cool.
Aren't we all?
But anyways, yeah, that's going to be very frustrating to figure out what year is a kid when I'm looking at him. And like, all right, well, is he eligible or not for the draft? I have no clue. Couldn't tell you. UFL news. So UFL awards, I haven't heard when these are getting announced. But Joel Klatt did give us his updated. I hate that he did picks again this week. He did them last week, and he was going to be wrong. So he picked him again this week. And I think there was only one switch, and it's Defensive Player of the Year, which he switched to my pick. I picked him last week when Joe Klatt picked Kai Nakua, I think. But I picked Braylon Speaks. I think Braylon Speaks much deserves it. 8.5 sacks this year, or 9. I can't remember if he got one this week or not. I don't think he did. But yeah, I think he leads the UFL in sacks, has been a monster off the edge, great in the run game as well. So I think I agree with that Defensive Player of the Year. MVP, it hasn't been great for Adrian Martinez the last couple of games, but I do still think he should be the MVP. The touchdown interception ratio is really good, as well as I believe he ended the regular season, as the leader in rushing yards, which is crazy that a quarterback was going to lead the league in rushing. So he has that. Offensive Player of the Year, Joe Klatt picked Battlehawks wide receiver Hakeem Butler, which I do think that's a solid pick as well. Led the league in receiving, I believe, and receiving touchdowns. I think he also led the league in. Coach of the Year. Coach of the Year was a tough one for me. He has Skip Holtz for Birmingham. And if San Antonio would have won against St. Louis, I would have said no. Skip Holtz should not be the Coach of the Year. It should go to Wade Phillips. But because San Antonio lost, I do agree. I think Skip Holtz is probably going to be the guy for the 9-1 Stallions team there. But yeah, I mean, I really don't think Defensive Player of the Year is probably the toughest one. Offensive Player of the Year, I don't think there's that much competition for that. And like I said, for Coach of the Year, I think it's really only between Holtz and Wade Phillips. I mean, people probably could want to throw Anthony Becht in there for the Battlehawks. Obviously, you could probably make an argument for any of the 4 playoff teams, Mike Nolan of the Michigan Panthers as well. But yeah, I think it's Holtz or Phillips there. And then Defensive Player of the Year, Kua is another guy who's kind of lost steam, I think, from early in the season. But yeah, I mean, I could see a case. He tied for the lead with 3 interceptions on the season. So I could see that. But I would also throw in Derek Roberson for the Defenders. He had an excellent season as a defensive end there. But yeah. Speaking of the Defenders, we got our first NFL tryout for a UFL player this offseason. The Eagles, my birds, are working out Defenders wide receiver Brandon Smith. So pretty good season for him. Caught a long touchdown yesterday. And yeah, I mean, wide receivers, a position the Eagles need. They need to look at some of these guys because they need depth there, especially with the Devontae Parker retirement. They did sign John Ross a couple weeks ago, but always looking to upgrade and add some competition, which I think they definitely do need in terms of depth at the wide receiver position. NFL news. The NFL, we're going to likely get a resolution this week for the Eagles and Falcons tampering investigations. So Atlanta has been reported to be a lot more or a lot more serious violations than the Philly with Saquon Barkley was. So I don't know. I have no kind of beat on what the penalties are going to be. I mean, I don't think Atlanta is going to get as big of a loss of draft picks as the Dolphins did. Thought the Dolphins was pretty egregious with their pursuit of Tom Brady and Sean Payton across a 3-year span from 19 to 21. But so the Falcons, I mean, I don't think it's going to be a first. I think second next year in 2025 is going to be the height of that one, plus probably a later round pick as well, either in 25 or 26. The Eagles, I don't know, because if theirs is less than the Falcons, maybe a 4 is the height of that one. I don't believe it would reach into day 2 draft picks. So I think a day 3 pick for Philly is probably what's going to happen for them. Plus a fine. Howie Roseman's probably going to get fined, just like Terry Fontenot is probably going to get fined in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
The Giants tight end Darren Waller expected to make his decision about his future by next week's minicamp. Most of the people, though, around the league expect him to retire. So that means if you haven't had your dynasty draft, unfortunately for you, sir, you said you have. Theo Johnson is the dude. He should be up there with the likes of Brock Bowers and Jatavian Sanders and those guys, because there's not a lot of other competition on the Giants roster for tight end. If Waller retires, it's really Theo Johnson's gig. So yeah, I mean, that'd be a big boost. Unfortunately for me, I always have good tight ends. Like, I don't need tight ends. That's my issue. So
I should be good. My tight end room is pretty stacked. I think I have Fryermuth, Laporta, someone else. Jatavian Sanders, and who's the tight end from Arizona?
Trey McBride.
Yeah, I have those 4, so I'm good.
Yeah, dude, like once you get like tight ends, usually don't. There's not a lot of variance in terms of tight end play. Like if you get a couple good ones, like you're set.
I'm set, man. I got a couple
usually
really
for
good
the long haul. Like
like Laporta, and if Fryermuth can maybe step up a notch. I like Fryermuth still, but I mean I like my 2 other tight ends more, and then Sanders can grow into something. I'm feeling good at my tight end position. I might even be looking to trade them for value.
Well, hey, man, I will say, in terms of the Steelers quarterbacks, Fryermuth should be a good play this year because
I'm banking on it.
Russ loved the tight ends in Seattle. Didn't really do a lot. I mean, Greg Dulcich had some decent plays with Russ last year. But and Justin Fields obviously loved having Cole Kmet in Chicago there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, couple releases this week. Kickers. The Bills, they released punter Matt Hawk, and the Commanders. Big news out of Washington. They released kicker Brandon McManus. He's facing 2 counts of sexual assault while he was with the Jaguars. That allegedly occurred on a flight to their London game last season, I think it was. So that it always brings up the questions like, all right, well, do they know something now? Is that why they released him? Like, do they know that he's going to get indicted or whatnot? We'll see. But it's also big news just for the Commanders roster standpoint. They're going into minicamp and they don't have a kicker right now. So maybe they are a team that looks at the UFL though, because we had some really great kickers this year. I think the kicking kind of tailed off near the end of the season. Obviously, this week it was horrendous for a lot of.
And I mean, as I was going to mention that, it's like, who's the best kicker? I mean, the most exciting one would be Bates, but you're in an outdoor stadium. 2 of your 3 division rivals are outdoor stadiums. He's proven to struggle out there. Do you want to take that risk?
I can tell you. You want to know who the best kicker is, just strictly percentage-wise?
Who?
It's the Renegades kicker Jonathan Garibay. He played in 7 games. I don't have the stats updated to include this past week's game, but the 6 games that he did play prior to this weekend, he was 10 of 11, 90.9%. Now, he only had a long of 48. He hasn't been asked to kick long. But if you want a guy that I know has a bigger leg, you can go with the next guy, which is Andre Schmidt, who he went 2 for 2 this week, so he is now up to 19 out of 21.
It's not too bad.
Which would get you 90.5%. And he has a long of 61 this year. So,
well, I think that would be the one I'd look at.
Yeah, that's a really solid guy.
Yeah.
No one
and they
else.
play in an outdoor stadium, right?
No. St. Louis plays in the Dome.
Oh, that's right. Maybe they like Roughneck's guy because he does play outdoors.
Yeah, the Renegades guy, yeah.
Oh, yeah, Renegades. My bad. Roughnecks, Renegades.
Yeah, definitely you do not want you actually don't want Jake Bates, man. I mean, when you look at he's got the leg, obviously. Now, I do think Jake Bates is going to find a home somewhere because it's going to be interesting to see if these teams start carrying kickoff specialists like college teams do because of the new kickoff rules and the need to get the ball down the field deeper. Because when you look at Bates here, let me add his 2 of 3 field goals. Yeah, I mean, he's hitting 77.3%. Like I said, 3 of 7 outdoors, though. But he has a long of 64, second longest field goal in football history. So, you don't want Ramiz Ahmed either from the Stallions. And Ryan Santoso was the worst kicker in the league for the Brahmas. He is now under 70%, going 0 for 2 this week. So, yeah, I mean, it's really the best kickers are going to be Jonathan Garibay, Andre Schmidt. Chris Blewett, he only played a couple games before injury, and then he kicked this week as well. I don't think the Stallions attempted any field goals, though. But I have him as 8 of 9. And then Matt Coughlin, all really good for the Showboats, 14 of 16. JJ Molson for the Roughnecks, also pretty good, 13 of 15. So, yeah, there's some guys for sure. And a signing, talk about the Bills making a out-of-the-box signing. They signed Olympic gold medal wrestler.
And don't forget WWE superstar.
Well,
I'm not kidding.
Gable Stevenson. Or Stevenson, not Stevenson. Stevenson. He's going to play D-line, 6'1", 275, so pretty good size. A little short maybe for a DN, but never played football, never even put on a pair of cleats until he worked out for Buffalo. So he's going to have a very big uphill battle to make the roster in camp. But, I mean, I guess we have seen weirder things? Question mark? I mean, hey, Jordan Mailata, one of the best left tackles in the league, and he only played Australian rules football and rugby. So, all right, let's get to the Seahawks and Bengals.
I think you're missing a thing. I do want to mention Larry Allen passed away today.
Yeah.
He was a offensive tackle for Dallas Cowboys in the final 2 years of his career, the San Francisco 49ers. Hall of Famer, 11-time Pro Bowler, 6-time All-Pro, as Super Bowl champ. And get this, he was part of 2 separate decades, all team, all 1990s and all 2000s. So from what I hear, he passed away while on vacation with his family. So obviously just absolutely devastating for, the Allen family and the Cowboys organization. I remember earlier today, Emmitt Smith came out and had a very, very emotional video talking about Larry Allen and how much Larry meant to him and how much he meant in his life. So just rest in peace to Larry Allen. Just hoping his family can get through this loss. It seems like it was sudden. He passed away at only 52. So absolute beast and a great player on the field, and from what I've heard, a great man off. So devastating news to the football community.
Yeah. Probably the only person to block for both Troy Aikman and Tony Romo.
Yeah. Yeah, he was one of those rare ones. He came in late. He only played in one Super Bowl for the Cowboys. He was one of those one of those draft gems. He was a second round pick, and he immediately came in, won the Super Bowl, and was immediately impactful. And if it wasn't for him, I mean, that Cowboy run of dominance in the 90s probably would have stopped a lot earlier. I mean, He really helped maintain the Great Wall of Dallas while, free agency kind of chipped that team away year by year.
All right. Let's get to the Seahawks and the Bengals draft recaps here. Unfortunately, we couldn't get our Seahawks expert, John Babington, on, but
apparently he has this thing called a job. It's stupid. I know.
Yeah, we don't know what those are here.
What the hell is that?
This is a jobless homeless show, guys. Yeah. We don't do.
This is the bum ass show.
But yeah, so the Seahawks, first round, 16th overall, defensive tackle Byron Murphy, the second from Texas. Third round, 81st guard Christian Haynes from UConn. Fourth round, 118, linebacker Tyrese Knight from UTEP. Fourth round, 121, tight end A.J. Barner from Michigan. Fifth round, 136, corner Nehemiah Pritchett from Auburn. 3 sixth-rounders, 179, guard Satawa Laumea from Utah. 192, corner DJ James from Auburn. And a 207, offensive tackle Michael Jarrell from Findlay, Ohio. Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of big boy draft for the Seahawks. They needed to get some help in the trenches, specifically at the guard position. And the Byron Murphy one, I remember talking about the Seahawks, with John on some of our pre-draft shows, and he was a big fan of the D tackles. He wanted them to take, I think he wanted Byron Murphy in the first round. But again, I didn't see it. I like who they have. Now they are switching to a 3-4 under new head coach Mike McDonald. So I kind of get that. They needed some different type of players. But they have Jaron Reed at nose. They have Leonard Williams at one of the DN spots. The other DN spot is Draymond Jones. And then they have Jonathan Hankins as a backup nose. And after that, it's really not great. The D-end backups aren't really great. So I do get the pick. They have Mike Morris there as well, a 5th rounder last year. So I get the pick. I kind of like it. I mean, I liked Murphy as a player. Seems like he's going to get a good run, especially because the guys in front of him, a little older, with Jones and Williams and even Reed. Talk about the nose tackle, but yeah, I like that one. The second round pick is my favorite pick for the Seahawks, though. Guard Christian Haynes had an excellent Senior Bowl, can play all 3 positions inside. I was surprised at how well he transitioned to center at the Senior Bowl because he had never played it. But there's going to be some competition for sure, and I wouldn't be surprised if Haynes wins one of the spots up front because they have Laken Tomlinson, who they got from the Jets this offseason. At left guard, Olu Oluwatimi, was a 5th rounder last year at center, and Anthony Bradford's at right guard, a 4th rounder last year. So got some draft picks in the last 2 drafts that are going to compete for this thing. And they also have Nick Harris, who they signed from Cleveland at center. But yeah, that's my favorite pick for the Seahawks for sure, is Christian Haynes. The rest of it, I like Tyrese Knight. He's a good player, a little undersized, I thought. Nehemiah Pritchett, I thought, was a great pick in the 5th round. He was one of my favorite. He's going to be outside corner in my mind. That's where they have him. They have DJ James as the backup to Devon Witherspoon at nickel. And the other 2 linemen I didn't really have anything about. I wasn't a big fan of AJ Barner, though, at tight end, even though they did need tight end, because it's not great after Noah Fant on the depth chart right now.
Yeah, something tells me they really wanted Eric All, but weren't able to trade up for him. So they got Barner, his teammate. I kind of disagree with you on the Murphy. I think it's a great fit. I think he's the kind of guy in the 3-4 that makes a ton of sense for Seattle, and he's a guy that will naturally fit into a defense that's transitioning from a different play style, who will be able to, not have to work out being from a different defensive standpoint. I'm with you on Christian Haynes. I mean, the fact that he fell all the way to 81, I'm really shocked. I thought he was a 2nd-round talent. And we talked over and over again with the Seahawks. Their big thing was trenches, and that's what they did. First 2 picks, Murphy and Haynes. It makes a ton of sense. The other picks, I like Knight. Like you mentioned, he's undersized. I think he probably will be transitioned kind of into more of an edge kind of player with this play style. I think he's more speed. I don't want to give this comparison to every undersized outside linebacker, but like Ivan Pace of the Vikings, everyone kind of wants that kind of Ivan Pace player on your team, and Knight could be that. Barner, I didn't hate it. Kind of with you, they needed more tight end depth, and he was probably the guy they liked at that point. Maybe if they wanted to trade up, they had 3 6th-round picks. Maybe they could have traded up with a team and gotten Eric Hall, but I guess Barner is the guy they liked. Pritchett, I liked. And again, kind of like what you said, I don't know much about the other offensive linemen, but I do really like DJ James. I had DJ James as a guy I was looking at as a Viking fan. I was kind of wondering if they would want to get him in like the 5th round as a nickel, and I like him in the 6th. But yeah, I really like Seattle, and as I mentioned in the last draft video we talked about, I do genuinely believe that you can never overdraft in the trenches, and Seahawks looked at the interior offensive line and said, we just need more. We need to get guys in there, and we need to see, who sticks. And we're gonna draft 3 offensive linemen and just see what they can become. So I'm a fan, even though I don't really know Laumea and Jarrell, just getting more guys that have experience in the trenches and helping defend your quarterback, and seeing who can rise to the top and be that offensive lineman, that starting offensive lineman in the future. It can come from anywhere, and getting more lottery picks is always a good choice when it comes to that position group.
Yeah, just going back to Tyrese Knight, 6'1.5", 233. So he's got to put on some weight.
He definitely does.
At least probably 10 pounds if he wants to stick. Because right now he's definitely, and they have him at one of the backup inside linebacker spots. But I think he's got a good shot. I mean, off-ball linebacker was one of my needs for Seattle, because it's not really good, especially when you have to double it up, at that position, when you're going to move some of your outside linebackers in the 4-3 or your defensive ends to the outside linebacker spot from the 4-3. And then you have to have 2 off-ball linebackers that are more of a middle linebacker in a 4-3 defense into the 3-4. They signed Tyrell Dodson. They signed Jerome Baker. And that's really it. I think Tyrese Knight's going to get a lot of playing time because really I don't know a lot of these guys that are on this inside linebacker chart here. I've never heard of Drake Thomas. I've never heard of Patrick O'Connell. I love my guy John Radigan. He's still rolling around the league, former Army Knight there. And Easton Gibbs is a guy I really like. They signed him undrafted free agency, linebacker out of Wyoming, can play well. And then Devin Richardson, also got to mention him just because he's John's guy. He's a New Mexico. I don't remember if it's New Mexico State or New Mexico, but he's a guy that John has personally told me about a couple times. Or no, he was Washington State, I should say. He would transfer to Washington State, I think, from New Mexico State, but whatever. That's John's guy, though. John's
Close enough.
Yeah. All right, let's go to Cincy. Let's talk about them. 17th overall, offensive tackle Amarius Mims from Georgia. Go Dogs. Second round, 49th, defensive tackle Chris Jenkins from Michigan. Third round, 2 picks, 80th, wide receiver Jermaine Burton from Alabama. 97th, defensive tackle McKinley Jackson from Texas A&M. Fourth round, 115th, tight end Eric All from Michigan. Fifth round, 149th, corner Josh Newton, TCU. 2 picks in the 6th, 194, tight end Tanner McLaughlin from Arizona. 214th, edge rusher Cedric Johnson from Ole Miss. 2 7th rounders, 224, safety Dejon Anthony from Ole Miss. And 237, center Matt Lee from the U. Take it away, Jimmy.
Oh boy, putting me on the spot. We all knew they wanted offensive line help, and that's exactly what they went for with Mims, who is probably the last top-end offensive tackle left at that point of the draft, unless you want to include Guyton. I don't. I think Guyton's like the start of the next tier. So, I mean, getting the last pretty
Jordan
good
Morgan
one.
as well.
Who?
Jordan Morgan as well.
Oh, Jordan Morgan. I kind of have Morgan and Guyton in that kind of like same area. Kind of like, and I think Mims was like the bottom of the like top tier to me, if that makes sense. But I like Mims. He's the guy you need. Chris Jenkins out of Michigan. This definitely, looking at this draft, you could definitely tell Bengals saw their needs and saw the guys that might be leaving the team and immediately decided to go, all right, we need to hedge our bets against people leaving. Chris Jenkins is always considered, mid-second round defensive tackle talent. He was always pretty effective in Michigan. I don't hate this pick. It's pretty solid. Third pick, Jermaine Burton out of Alabama. Now, we've had a lot of discussions about Burton. He was probably one of the better second-tier wide receiver prospects in this draft, I would say. I always was a fan of Burton. So getting him, especially after losing Tyler Boyd and with Higgins and Chase kind of up in the air. I don't think they're going to lose Chase, but Higgins you possibly could. Getting Burton makes a lot of sense. Jackson right after Burton later in the third. Sure, you're doubling up on defensive tackles if you're first, 2 in your first 4. But like I always say, I don't mind doubling up on trenches. You can never be, too deep in that. And then if in the 4th round, they took tight end Eric All. Mentioned him earlier of the Seahawks. Definitely seemed like a guy the Seahawks probably wanted but couldn't get. Eric All is a pretty solid tight end prospect. And then after him, just at this point, I'm starting to not recognize a lot of names, to be quite honest. I knew Newton. Newton's a pretty solid corner out of TCU. Probably the interesting part to me in their second half of the draft, I did mention they doubled up on defensive tackle, but doubling up on tight end, I don't know what the plan is there. You probably know more than me, but just on a like eyeball standpoint, it's just like that's pretty interesting to do. Do you think it was a value pick? Do you think they really desperately needed tight end depth? Is there something they liked with Tanner that Eric didn't give them. I'm a little shocked at that one.
Yeah. So Tanner McLaughlin, I have ranked higher on my dynasty rankings than Eric All. I forgot to mention AJ Barner's the lowest out of the position players on these two teams. He's down at 67th. I just wasn't a big fan. Didn't produce a ton at Michigan. Obviously, it's tough in that run-based offense, but also just because they have Noah Fant as a starter in Seattle, and I think Barner could be tight end too potentially, but we'll see.
Yeah, maybe they're seeing him coming out of Michigan and going, "Oh, he's probably really good at run blocking." Maybe that's something that appeals to them. Something you always like that, like tight end 2 or 3.
Yeah, because they signed Pharaoh Brown as well, and I expect him to probably be tight end 2. But in terms of these two, like I said, I have McLaughlin higher than Eric All on my rankings. I have him at number 35. Eric All's at 42, just because of the receiving threat. McLaughlin was a guy that got a lot of steam late in the process as a field stretcher, whereas Eric All is more of that Y tight end that's going to be in line and block well, as well as give you some receiving upside. But you look at McLaughlin, 6'5" and an 8th, 245. So he's not very heavy. That's why he can run so fast and get down the field, as opposed to Eric All, if my phone would like to work. Eric All's a little shorter, 6'4" and 3/8, but he's 255. So he's definitely heavier, going to be your inline guy. And I mean, I think it's a good thing to have both for the future. It's going to be tough. I don't think both are going to make the roster. Neither might make the roster, the 53 anyways, because they are pretty set in terms of already NFL experienced guys. Obviously, they signed Mike Gesicki, who's going to be your split out receiving tight end from New England. And then they have Drew Sample, who they have liked. And then Tanner Hudson, who was a guy that produced a bunch last year for them. So those three are already ahead of them. We'll see. I wouldn't be surprised if they use McLaughlin out wide. That would be a big wide receiver out there, but they don't really need, wide receivers. They have a bunch of guys, but I wouldn't be surprised if he gets tried out there as well. You didn't have anything for the last three guys?
I don't know much about the last three, to be quite honest. Those are guys who probably might not even make it through training camp unless they really shock.
Yeah. For me, I really enjoyed the Bengals draft, especially the first three picks. I really liked the McLaughlin selection late and the Josh Newton pick as well. Now, they do have their tackles for now. Orlando Brown at left, Trent Brown at right. Both guys in their 30s, though. That's the biggest issue. That's why they needed Amarius Mims. And also because Orlando Brown has had injuries the last couple of seasons. I don't recall Trent Brown having any injuries recently, but that was the big thing, was like, all right, well, we have these two guys in their 30s. We need someone for the future for one, but we also need insurance if Orlando Brown can't play the whole season, which I think is good. Amarius Mims, obviously, 8 games in his college career. So
that's a risk.
It's also right. But, he's 6'8", I think it was. He was one of the biggest linemen in the draft. And he has a ton of talent. And I don't know. I am risk averse when it comes to draft picks. I like sure things, even though there's never a sure thing in the draft. I like guys that have a proven track record of health, for one, and production as two. So that's kind of just what I like. So I was not a big fan of Mims in terms of my teams. Obviously, I'm going to support him. He's George Bulldog. But Jenkins, though, Jenkins is kind of in the same situation. BJ Hill, Sheldon Rankins, the two starting defensive tackles right now in the base 4-3, older guys. So the Bengals, what they're hoping for is that Chris Jenkins and their 2022 third rounder, Zach Carter, they're hoping that those two guys are the future in the middle there. And then why did they draft McKinley Jackson after they already drafted Chris Jenkins? Well, because McKinley Jackson's a run stuffer. He didn't have a lot of sack production at Texas A&M. Highly regarded recruit, 5-star. I can't remember if he was the number one player in his class or not. I don't remember. But that was the big knock on him. That was why me and a bunch of other people were surprised that he went in the third round, because the sacks just weren't there. He's also a little bit undersized, 6'1" and a half, 331 there. So the weight's good, but the height is a little undersized. Mm-hmm. So he's going to be a run stuffer, big body in the middle with what you hope is going to be some pass rush production. But yeah, he's really getting there for the run defense. And then when it comes to day 3, like I said, Eric All I have below Tanner McLachlan, not just because of the difference in skill set, but also because it seems like the Bengals are okay with it. But the injury history is prevalent for Eric All. Major knee injury a couple years ago, tore pretty much everything in his one knee. And finally got back 2 years later. Last season was decent, but if that's all behind him and if he can stay healthy, I think he could turn into a good player for them. Josh Newton's a good guy at corner. I thought he was going to be a nickel. They have him as a backup outside right now. And my thing with him was like, all right, well, if you're going to draft a guy later, why didn't you just draft an outside corner earlier? When you were drafting a run stuffer in the third round, you could have drafted a corner. I would have taken a corner over Eric Hall as well. I mean, he's got good size. He's 5'11", or 5'10" and 5'8", 190. So, I mean, he has the size to play outside, but I just thought Newton was a better fit in the nickel position. Regardless, they needed corners. The depth chart behind Cam Taylor-Britt and DJ Turner, Mike Hilton was pretty barren. There wasn't much there. So instead of drafting 2 tight ends or 2 defense tackles, they should have drafted 2 corners. Now, Dejon Anthony, they do have him at corner. They have him in the nickel. So, granted, he's third string nickel right now behind 2020 street free agent Jalen Davis. But see if he can carve out a role. I already talked about McLachlan. Said Johnson, I mean, it's a good pick. He's going to have a little bit of an uphill battle to make the roster with the guys they already have at defensive end. They're pretty set at that, depending on how many guys they keep on the D-line. I don't know. It depends if they're going to keep like 10, or are they going to maybe even keep 11 potentially. If they keep 11, definitely has a better chance, but not sure if he's going to make it or not. He seemed to me to be more of an outside linebacker, 3-4 guy. But he does have the defensive end size, though. 6'3", 260. That's fine. Maybe a little light, but it's not horrendous there. And he's got some speed. And then I already said about Anthony's at corner. Matt Lee is a guy that experienced player out of Miami. Probably not going to make the roster, though. They're already set at center. And I don't think he's going to beat either Jackson Kirkland or Cody Ford for a backup guard spot. So Matt Lee's probably the only guy that I definitely don't think is going to make the roster. So, but it is grading time. Oh, I forgot. I didn't even really talk about Jermaine Burton, I guess. Burton, I love it. I absolutely love it. They're going to need a future guy to pair with Chase once Higgins leaves next year. And I think Burton's going to make the starting lineup right away. He really doesn't have a lot of competition. I mean, they have Trenton Irwin as the third wideout right now. I think Burton's a lot better than Irwin is. Now he does have to fight with a couple other draft picks from last year, guys that played decently, especially Andre Iosivas played very well as a 6th rounder last year out of Princeton. Charlie Jones, I was disappointed his rookie year last season as a 4th rounder. I thought he would have carved out a nice slot role, which he still could now that Tyler Boyd's gone. Charlie Jones could see a big uptick because Burton isn't a slot guy. Burton is an outside receiver. So I think Jones, we could see a good second year for Charlie Jones there. And yeah, I really like the Burton pick. That might be my favorite pick for Cincy. 2 third-round picks there, a pick apart for me. My favorite picks on each team. And for the Seahawks, for my needs, before we get to the grades, they left out what you kind of talked about with Tyrese Knight, edge. Mm-hmm. They did not draft a bona fide edge player. I thought they needed to. Now apparently they like their guys. They do have players. It's not like they don't have outside linebackers to play it. Boye Mafe, 2nd rounder in 22. Uchenna Nwosu, they signed from LA last year. They drafted Derek Hall in the 2nd round last year. Darrell Taylor's a 2nd rounder from 2020. And then they have Nelson Caesar, who had a nice career at Houston as an undrafted free agent. So, yeah, I mean, like we said though, if Knight would switch, he has to put on weight for sure. For Cincy, let me see if I had anything left for them. Yeah, just one little thing. Maybe they didn't have to draft Matt Lee with their last pick. I thought they should have drafted a quarterback. Now, I can't remember if they're a team that usually keeps 2 or 3. I think they kept 3 a lot of the year last year, especially once Burrow went down. But I had QB3 as my last need for the Bengals. I thought that they needed to get a guy, Jake Browning. They signed Logan Woodside from Atlanta. They signed Rocky Lombardi as an undrafted free agent. I just thought they needed to draft someone with a little bit of a higher upside. Whoa.
Sorry, I was looking up the Cincy Bengals undrafted free agents, and an ad popped up. My bad. I was like, oh, you're like, oh, they didn't take a QB. I was like, oh, let me look it up. Rocky Lombardi.
But yeah, I thought they needed to draft the guy. Like I said, probably they could have done it with that last pick that they had. I thought they needed to draft the guy with just a little bit higher upside than some of the guys they have right now, and a guy that they can develop into potentially, the long-term backup to Burrow, or a trade chip like a lot of the teams like to do, like Philly loves to do that. So, all right. It's grade time. Here we go. Seahawks, I'm giving a B-. I liked the first 2 picks, and then I was okay with the next 3, and then the 6th round I was like, whatever. So B-. The top 2 are really the 2 that matter for me, though.
I was gonna go B. I like the top 2. I do like Knight. I think he can develop into something. And I do like both their corner picks a lot. I really like Pritchett. I really like James. So I'll give him a B. And I like I mentioned, I like teams that just, when it may not be the sexiest pick, but just get a lot of guys for the trenches and see who sticks. And this is a team that got 3 for the offensive line. It kind of like you said, not getting an edge kind of bumped them down. And the thing is too, when you're in the mid-teens in about every draft, it's hard to get the like really good pick. But I do like Murphy a lot, and I like Haynes. But it's hard to really get that above and beyond pick. So I'll give him a solid B.
Bengals.
Quantity is not always quality to me. I'm gonna give Bengals a C+. I wasn't a big fan after the first 3 rounds. I like Newton, but I don't know that. And the thing is too, I'm not a big fan of Mims. And Jenkinson's okay. I like Burton, but I'm gonna give him a C+.
Yeah, much higher, much higher. I could go with the B because of Mims' lack of experience, but I'm going B+ for Cincinnati. I liked most of what they did until the last 3. They had 10 selections, which is a plus. And the kind of role-based thing that they did with the D tackle and the tight ends, I like that. Especially the Eric All McLaughlin thing. I think I say this too much when teams have 2 differing styles of tight ends on their roster. But the Patriots always come up with when that happens. With Gronk and Hernandez, they had that 12 personnel set where Hernandez was the receiving threat and Gronk was the more inline guy. That's what I think All and McLaughlin could be, kind of that same thing. But yeah, I mean, Mims, I think to get the guy that they hope is going to be the left tackle of the future. And then, like I said, Burton, love the pick. Jackson and Jenkins. Jackson was iffy on the value for that, but I understand his role on the roster. And then, like I said, tight ends, I liked the Newton pick as well. Can play outside or inside, I think. And then the last 3 were so-so, but I think Sed Johnson has decent upside as an outside linebacker or a defensive end. And Anthony potentially has a shot at a nickel position if he can beat 1 or 2 players out there. So yeah, I like B+ for Cincy. That's the show for today.
We do have a little news, though.
Well,
before we go.
I was going to say one thing. That the Eagles officially placed Fletcher Cox and Jason Kelce on the reserve retired list. But I do see what you're talking about. The 49ers signing Commanders tight end Logan Thomas. So that's big. They definitely, I can't remember off the top of my head who is after Kittle on the depth chart, but they did lose Ross Dwelly in free agency, who had been the tight end 2 for a couple years. So that's a big one. Logan Thomas just adding another weapon to that 49ers offense. But yeah, next Monday we'll be back talking UFL Championship game week. We'll get you all your UFL game recaps from the playoffs this coming weekend. And then we'll have college football, UFL, NFL news. And then we'll consider our draft recap series, Dolphins and the Eagles. Don't forget to follow us on all our social media at FAA Podcast on Instagram and X, FAA_bets as well. FAApodcast.com is our website. Check us out here on YouTube, Facebook, X, and Instagram, as well as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for the support again. I mentioned a couple shows ago, I think I said about the 2,500 total downloads. Dude, we had 298 downloads last week. Thank you, Singapore, for upping our downloads.
Glad the Singaporean crowd can enjoy football. Grow the game.
And, of course, our Saskatoonians. I don't know what you call people from Saskatoon.
Yeah, Saskatoonans, you've been caught up by the Singaporeans. Stop watching hockey and listen to this podcast.
All right, man. I appreciate it. We'll see you back Thursday show this week. Another Thursday show this week instead of Friday. So we'll see you then.